So why don't you go? So you mentioned like you had brow clients, like lots of diversity, skin tone,
Mhm.
age range, lots of sun damage clients, mature clients. What what skin type do you find like the most challenging that can really mess with our healed results? Make any beautiful pigment in a bottle heal kind of shitty if
Uh,
we don't know how to prevent that.
yeah, I definitely find that it is one of two that's going to do it to me. It's going to be someone either who has incredibly dry, paper thin, like Fitzpatrick one or two, like very mature skin. I find that can be a little bit like, oh, I'm going to be very careful. And I learned a lesson each time I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one that is really, really hard for me is ruddy and oily and thick pores
Yeah,
and just uneven texture.
yeah,
So it's the two of those that I have the hardest time. And that's when I lean on my color theory.
yeah.
Otherwise, it's pretty much, plug and play my colors. I have a set palette and I don't deviate from it really.
Yeah, no, that's really smart. Ruddy is, I agree with you, the most challenging skin type. It puts a lot of stress and challenges our pigments, our decisions. We have to, think, really think when we're working on ruddy skin. And there's different levels of ruddy skin from level 1, level 2 to level 3. Level 3 being, oh my gosh, so red
Mm-hmm.
and ruddy. And I find ruddy skin to be textured, larger pores, oily, real red. And a lot of people, Michelle, early on when they're newbies, they'll look at ruddy skin or pink skin because there's pink skin, like you're Scottish, you're Irish, right? You're not quite ruddy. You might develop into a ruddy as you
Yeah.
go through the years, but you're not really classified as ruddy yet. But you almost treat the pink skin
Mm-hmm.
like a ruddy. They're just not, and they're
Mm-hmm.
challenging. And both skin types, newbies often will look at pink skin, ruddy skin, and they'll think they're warm. That's warm skin,
Yep.
right?
I know. I know. I love how the prevailing sort of like it's almost like a mythos that gets passed down around is when you see red, add green. And I'm
Yeah,
like, when you do that, you get gray. Like
right.
that's what's gonna happen, guys.
Yeah.
And I learned that the hard way on my own face because I used a green based brown 4 years ago and it went super gray. And I was like, oh, learn that lesson.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, you got to add, if possible, use a neutral or a warm-based pigment, and then you have to, a lot of times, you have to manually add additional warmth to prevent the
Mhm.
grays because pink skin, ruddy skin definitely can cause your pigment to heal gray. I mean, super gray, really an unattractive shade of gray. And I find the most challenging ruddies are like the dark hair ruddies that want
Mhm.
dark pigment because dark
Mhm.
pigment is cool, right? There's no such thing as a warm dark pigment. So sometimes you have to work with a dark pigment that's cool and you have to implant that on a canvas on a lady that's super ruddy and super
Mhm.
cool and going to ash out pigment no matter
Mhm.
what.
Mhm.
So sometimes you have that, and that can
Mhm.
be like super challenging as
Yeah.
well.
What's your go-to on that, Taryn? Because I have my, what I tend to do, but what is a powder brow? So a powder brow that you're doing on someone who's got that ruddy, they're like Snow White, that one,
Yeah,
high contrast.
yeah.
What's your go-to color for that one?
And it depends the level of ruddiness. Like, because I
Mhm.
break it down to level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 3 being the
Mhm.
most cool,
Mhm.
and we're going to get the most gray in that healed result. So it depends on the level of coolness. Um, if they're super ruddy, like level 3, oftentimes, Michelle, I won't, even though I know they want a dark color, that first session, I'm not going to go in with a dark color. I'm going to go
Mhm.
in with maybe like a medium or a color in between medium and dark. And I'm going to add
Mhm.
some yellow orange and
Mhm.
get that to heal rich and pretty first. And then at the touch up, once I see that healed rich and pretty, now I can layer on top my really dark color. And of course, I put some orange or some gray, yellow, orange into that dark color as well. So sometimes I do it in steps if I'm nervous, you know, because sometimes it's not always good to take a dark color that's dark and cool and that first session, put it right on skin. Sometimes it's better first to build a foundation of, you know, rich color and then layer on top that dark skin. So I do that quite often, and I find that to be super successful for me. That's a formula that's worked for me for many, many years.
Yes, yes, I can see that. When I also wanted to talk about in those kinds of instances whether you reach for like an organic or an inorganic, or it doesn't matter to you. Because I have my feelings on that.
Yeah,
But I was wondering about you.
Yeah, I reach for an inorganic. Yeah, an iron oxide. Because the organics have more of a if not all I see these statements all the time, like organics age to gray and blue, iron oxides age to red and orange. Not all the time, you know. Not all the time. That's not. I don't like those blanket statements. But if an organic is going to shift color over time, it's going to shift to those grays. So the way my mind works, if I've got a canvas, a skin type that's going to heal and shift color to gray over time, because that's what that particular skin's going to do, why would I put an organic on there that has the propensity to shift or age to a gray? So, right, it's almost like a double whammy, right? It's like I'm not even giving that brow a chance to stay out of the gray zone. So I will, on those skin types, I do like the iron oxides, because if an iron oxide is going to shift over time, they are going to shift typically to the warmer tones. But and so that's just the way my mind works. I'm super analytical, and I just think all these things out. I would rather have a pigment that's going to shift to a warmer tone on a skin that has a propensity to shift to gray. Do you see what I mean? It makes more sense to me. Yeah, yeah.
I agree with that. And I think that where my mind goes is when I'm thinking about brow colors and how they're mixed and the color components, it's almost always yellow, red, and black to make a brow color in almost all of them. And the organics like PermaBlend or like the loaded lines, even though they don't fade gray, they have a tendency to hold on to the black part of the brown longer than the yellow and the red. And on some clients, that's okay. Like when I need a cooler color, that's okay.
Right.
But for almost all of those ruddy clients, if the black is the thing that stays the longest for them, they're gonna look gray or blue.
They're gonna look gray or blue. Yeah. And I know the whole industry right now is just high on organics, right? I mean, they're just tripping and loving organics. You know, and we have in LI, you know, we came out with an organic line, but LI's been making organics, you know, for the last 25 years. We also do the iron oxides. So I think I would love to see artists in the industry not just get locked into, you know, one or the other, because as we're talking about right now, there are cases and situations where an organic is going to be a better choice for that particular client, that particular skin type, that particular case. And on the flip side, there are going to be situations where an iron oxide is absolutely the more ideal choice for that particular skin type, that particular situation. So it's being a smart artist, a thinking artist, and not just reaching, you know, for a brand or a particular, you know, type of pigment. It's being a thinking artist and having both types, an iron oxide, so, you know, some iron oxides, some organics, and knowing when to use one or the other, right? So, yeah,
I agree.
I think if artists could get there, they would see less grays, they would see less of, you know, the flawed colors, as we call them, and see more true results and better aging
Absolutely.
if they incorporated both, you know, into their toolbox.
Exactly. Yeah. I love my toolbox. I love reaching in and saying, okay, I look back. I write down all my color recipes. I don't know about you, but every time for each client, I write down what I used for each appointment and each touch up so I can keep track of it. And I've referred back to those notes so many times to learn different things and then to grow better as an artist.
Yeah.
So I'm sure most people do. But I just learned that tattoo artists don't do that. And I was like, well, that kind of makes sense. They're using like 20 billion colors.
No, tattoo artists don't do that. And you know, like I'm teaching Michonne, my artist here, areolas. She just did her first areola the other day. And when I do areolas, it's like I'm tattooing a body tattoo. I'll have 6 or 7, 8 large pigment caps out with lots of different colors, some diluted, some not diluted, because it's almost like doing a tattoo. You're trying to make the nipple look 3D, so you got to do light and dark shading. You got to put texture. And so I told Michonne, I'm like, it's areolas. What's gonna kind of mess with you a little bit is I don't write down like my color combinations because you can't. You're just
because it's a little here, a little there, a double dip here.
That's exactly right. It's not straightforward like an eyebrow or an eyeliner or a lip. It's like you're dipping here, dipping there, and it's like, oh, I need a little of this. And so it's really hard to write color notes on an areola. But the longer you do areolas, you just develop this sense. Like, you know, I did body tattooing for many years, and you're absolutely right. We do not write down what color green or brand of green. We don't write that stuff down at all. But it is good to write that stuff down when we're working on our eyebrows and our eyeliner, our lips. And I'm sure some people do areolas in a manner where they're not using all these colors and dilution percentages, where it's a little bit more straightforward and they can write, you know, pretty good color notes. But I certainly cannot.
I understand that.